Welcome to the Rugby Obsession Deep Dive. We are really thrilled to have you join us today.
Great to be digging into this.
Yeah, we're looking into something quite fascinating, really. It's a bit of a surprise from our sources.
Yeah.
We're asking why two huge rugby nations, New Zealand and South Africa, seem to be facing, well, pretty big hurdles hosting future Rugby World Cups.
It does seem counterintuitive, doesn't it?
It's a total paradox.
Okay.
These are the nations, that have dominated on the field. But off the field, when it comes to hosting the biggest event, suddenly they're struggling.
Right.
So get ready for some pretty eye-opening stuff about the business side of rugby. And hey, while you're settling in, make sure you hit subscribe for Rugby Obsession. That way you get all our deep dives sent straight to you.
Yeah, definitely do that. So we've been looking through the latest reports, Planet Rugby, some other sources too, trying to really get to the core of the problem here. Our plan today is basically to unpack the money side and the infrastructure side. These realities seem to be making it tougher and tougher for these, let's call them traditional, rugby nations to host the big one.
It's complicated. More than just who plays best on the day.
Way more.
Okay, let's get into it then. It really is this strange situation, The places where rugby is just part of the fabric, they seem to be getting pushed aside by the sheer commercial growth of the tournament.
Yeah.
How does World Rugby even manage that? Balancing the tradition, the heart of the sport, with, well, expanding it globally. Especially when those two things seem to pull in opposite directions sometimes.
Well, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it? Or maybe the multi-million-pound question in this case. This tension, tradition versus commercial needs, it's right at the center of why we're seeing these hosting challenges pop up.
Right.
World Rugby, they're the global body, but they also have massive financial responsibilities. And the World Cup, that's absolutely key to their books.
So let's kick off with South Africa. 4-time winners. The most successful team ever in the World Cup. You'd automatically think, yeah, they should host again soon.
You would, absolutely.
But our sources are saying, actually, the chances are pretty slim. And when you dig into why, it almost all boils down to one thing: money.
Indeed. I mean, remember the 2023 bid? South Africa was actually the preferred candidate recommended by the technical review.
Yeah, I remember that. Big controversy.
Huge controversy.
Yeah.
They lost out to France in the end. And that wasn't just, a political setback. It really shone a spotlight on this massive financial barrier.
So what was the barrier exactly?
Okay, so for that 2023 bid, the South African government had to promise, basically guarantee, our $300 million.
Our $300 million, how much is that roughly?
Let's see, it's about 12.9 million sterling, or maybe 16 million US dollars, give or take.
Wow.
And that's not the total cost of hosting, not by a long shot. It's a government backstop, a guarantee against losses. That's a big ask for any government, especially if they've got other pressing needs. And one source, quoted in the newspaper report, actually said it will be, and this is the word they used, impossible for SERU, the SA Rugby Union, to even bid for 2035 because of this kind of financial demand.
Impossible.
Yeah.
It's quite definitive.
It's a very stark way of putting it. Yeah. Shows the scale of the challenge.
So what's the fallout for the Springboks, for the fans? We found a quote from a prominent rugby boss who said, quite bluntly, "I don't think South Africa can compete financially to host the World Cup anymore."
Oof.
Yeah, they explained why. So the World Cup is World Rugby's only real revenue stream. And because of that, World Rugby will always go where the big money can be made. Simple as that, apparently.
And that really gets to the nub of it, doesn't it? Unlike, say, the Premier League in football or the NFL, with their massive yearly TV deals.
Right. Consistent money.
Exactly. World Rugby relies hugely on this tournament every 4 years. It's their cash cow. So every decision about who hosts has got a massive business angle.
Which puts countries like South Africa, the traditional ones, at a disadvantage if they can't match bids from, say, emerging markets with maybe deeper government pockets.
Precisely. It creates this constant tension, growth versus tradition.
It really makes you think, doesn't it? What does this shift mean for the soul of the tournament, for its legacy? Is it still accessible in the same way? It's not just about balance sheets. We even heard that the Springboks themselves, Dami de Hollande, was mentioned specifically. They actually used losing that 2023 bid as fuel.
Ah, interesting.
Yeah, motivation to beat France in that epic quarterfinal in 2023. So a financial loss maybe, but it turned into some powerful on-field fire.
And that just shows you the emotional connection, right? It's not just another sporting event for these countries. It's woven into their national identity.
Totally.
So the idea that their government maybe can't, or perhaps won't, provide the kind of guarantee that another nation can offer. That's a really tough pill to swallow for fans, for the unions, everyone involved.
Yeah, absolutely. You have to wonder if the very nature of rugby changes when the money starts to outweigh that history.
It's a valid concern.
Okay, let's pivot now. Let's head down to New Zealand. Aotearoa, they've hosted twice before too, shared the very first one back in '87.
Right, with Australia.
And then they did it solo in 2011, which was, widely seen as a huge success. Great atmosphere.
Definitely.
But even their CEO, Mark Robinson from NZ Rugby, he's basically saying he can't see the World Cup coming back anytime soon. And his reason. It's different from South Africa's, but just as significant, it seems.
Yeah, Robinson pointed squarely at stadiums. The size of them. That's New Zealand's big problem.
Stadiums. Really. Eden Park's pretty famous.
Oh, it is. It's their fortress, right? It holds about 50,000.
Right.
Which is decent. But he said the other grounds they regularly use for rugby just dwarf in comparison.
Okay.
He told NBR, that's a New Zealand publication, quite plainly, we don't have large stadiums in this country. And crucially for World Rugby's finances, we don't have profitable stadiums as it relates to fixtures with the All Blacks.
Profitable stadiums. What does that mean exactly?
Well, it's not just about the number of seats. It's about the premium seating, the corporate boxes, the hospitality suites, all the things that generate really high revenue per attendee.
The corporate side.
Exactly. Think about their other main grounds. Hamilton, Dunedin. They're great venues, fantastic atmosphere, but they hold maybe 20, 30,000. Fine for Super Rugby or an All Blacks test, but maybe not enough for multiple high-stakes World Cup games needing that big revenue potential.
So it's not just about having the cash to put in a bid, like South Africa's issue. It's about having the right kind of physical infrastructure at the scale World Rugby expects now.
That's it. Robinson was pretty blunt. He said it's very hard to see with the current infrastructure that we have in this country.
Which sounds like a realistic take, doesn't it? Given New Zealand's population size, around 5 million people.
Yeah, building several massive stadiums that might only get that kind of major use for a World Cup every, 20 or 30 years? The economics just don't stack up easily.
So connecting the dots. It seems modern World Cups need this huge investment in big modern venues.
Yep.
Venues that maybe older rugby nations just don't have or can't really justify building just for rugby.
It really points towards shifting towards countries that either already have that kind of infrastructure, maybe built for football or the Olympics.
Or countries with the financial muscle to build it specifically.
Right. The demands have definitely escalated.
And get this, they even looked at co-hosting. That really shows the struggle, doesn't it?
Yeah, Robinson confirmed they did talk to Australia about maybe taking on some games for the 2027 World Cup.
Like a pool or maybe even knockout games.
Something like that. But he said in the end, the stadia and the cost of stretching it across two countries made it a little bit difficult.
Wow. So even teaming up with their neighbor wasn't enough to clear the hurdles, infrastructure and cost.
It tells you a lot about where the bar is set now for hosting.
It really does. And listen, if you're finding this insight into the background of World Cup hosting as interesting as we are, please do remember to subscribe to Rugby Obsession. It helps us keep bringing you these deep dives.
Please do. So, looking ahead, the shift we're talking about, it's already happening, isn't it?
Seems like it. Australia's got 2027.
Then the USA in 2031, that's a massive move into a new market.
Huge.
And beyond that, sources are suggesting Spain, maybe Japan again for 2035 or 2039. Japan, obviously, hoping to repeat that amazing success they had in 2019.
Yeah, 2019 was brilliant. And Spain. That's interesting.
Yeah, growing rugby interest there. Plus, they have loads of big football stadiums already built, less infrastructure spending needed, potentially.
And then there's the really attention-grabbing possibility.
The joint bid from the Middle East.
Exactly. Saudi Arabia, UAE, Qatar. There's talk they might team up, which, again, points to nations with, significant financial clout and existing large-scale infrastructure, often from hosting other mega events.
It really highlights that trend, doesn't it? The move towards nations with deep pockets and big stadiums, even if rugby isn't their primary sport historically.
For World Rugby, you can see the logic. Expand the game, new markets, maximize the revenue, which, as we heard, is vital for them.
Absolutely. But for the fans, especially in places like New Zealand, South Africa, Wales, Ireland, it does raise questions. Will the World Cup feel the same if it's mostly held in places without that deep, ingrained rugby culture, even if the stadiums are state-of-the-art?
It's a tricky balance, isn't it? Preserving the roots while trying to grow the branches globally.
Very tricky.
So this brings us to a big question for you listening in. What are your thoughts on this? Where should the priority lie for future Rugby World Cups? Should it be about the money, the global reach, following this current trend? Or should World Rugby find ways to make sure the traditional heartlands, despite these hurdles, can still host the biggest event?
Could there be different models, maybe more financial help or tiered requirements?
Exactly. We'd love to know what you think. Let us know your opinions.
Yeah, it's a fascinating debate with strong arguments on both sides. Growing the game is important, no doubt, but so is that connection to history, to the places where rugby means so much.
Okay, so let's quickly recap what we've covered in this deep dive. We saw South Africa facing these major financial obstacles. That R$300 million guarantee for 2023 seemed to be a key blocker, making future bids look, well, unlikely right now.
Yeah, barring a big change from somewhere.
And then New Zealand, different problem, but same result, really. Their issue is stadium size and profitability. Eden Park isn't quite enough on its own. The others are too small by modern standards. And even trying co-host with Australia didn't quite work out.
It's striking, isn't it? These countries where rugby is just adored, deeply loved.
Yeah.
But the sheer scale, the commercial needs of the modern World Cup are pushing it towards places with, frankly, different economic realities and infrastructure.
Which leaves us with that big question hanging in the air.
How will World Rugby balance growing the game around the world with staying true to its roots, its traditional strongholds, in the years ahead?
It's a tension that's not going away, is it?
Yeah.
It's going to shape the future of the World Cup, no doubt.
For sure.
Right. Well, that's all we have time for in this Rugby Obsession deep dive. A massive thank you for listening in. We really hope you found that exploration as interesting as we did.
Hope it gave you some food for thought.
Definitely. And if you enjoyed it, please make sure you are subscribed to Rugby Obsession so you don't miss our next deep dive.
Yep. Hit that button.